All right, well, maybe wait just maybe one more minute. I still see people popping in, so I don't want to get started before everyone's joined us. So hang tight. It feels good to get some cheering from the home team here. And Monique indeed.
You say there's so much you don't know. You need to go and find yourself.
I would love that, actually.
Say you
Grace, I just don't know it.
know.
Joe. I'm not sure everyone else would love
'Cause you
that.
think you won't find it tied to someone else. Who said it's true that the growing only happens on your own? They don't know me and you. I don't think you have to leave. If to change is what you need, you can change right next to me. When you're high, I'll take the lows. You can ebb and I can flow. And we'll take it slow and grow as we go. Grow as we go.
All right. So, let's get started. A quick introduction, a little bit, I guess. My name's Jade Mitchell, and I was just like you guys just a few years ago. Um, I did LC 101, and I had never coded a day in my life before I did that. And now it's been a few years, and I am a full time software engineer for a company called Darty Business Solutions. Highly recommend checking them out. A great place to work in St. Louis. And I'm contracted out to Bayer, and I work at Bayer right now. And I am so jealous of you guys because so much of what I do is involved JavaScript, and I had to learn all of that on the job. And so you guys are getting a little bit of a head start, I think, on what a lot of the industry is tending towards right now. So that's really exciting. Um, and we'll just kind of get diving right in. We still have people joining, but at this point, it's slowing down quite a bit. So um, give me just a sec. Of course, this is my first time um, running this via Zoom. So there might be a few weird technical moments. But I have taught many LC 101 classes before, and I've done lectures many times before, so this is not totally my first rodeo. And again, I always ask to keep the question flow just like as if Doug were here, which he had the baby, by the way, which if you haven't seen the picture, it's adorable. I'll do my best to address comments. It's just very hard to manage. As you guys can probably see my chat box right now, I'll try and keep an eye on that. Yeah, there's just too much stuff on my desktop. So maybe I'll just take a peek at it occasionally for now. But diving right in, we're going to be talking about fetch and JSON. So hopefully you guys have done the prepared materials to be ready for lecture. It's going to be a lot of fun. I absolutely love this part of the unit. I love getting into the actual browser and doing some HTML and really getting to play with things. It's for me, I'm an actor and singer, and I love the arts, and this is the closest I get to tying in that artistic side when it comes to code a lot of the time. And especially when I was starting out, like you guys, this is what really got me into coding. This is where I got comfortable and kind of how I got my first job. And it's just now that I'm kind of starting to enjoy backend actually. So I love this part. This was my passion when I did LC 101. So I hope you guys enjoy it as well. So we'll dive right in with some review questions like Doug usually does. And I'll start right in. So what is a GUI or GUI? You might hear on some YouTube videos. Yes, Lisa, I'm recording this right now. I don't have the admin permissions. Yes, thank you. The answer's flying in. I don't have the admin permissions for Zoom. Doug has those, and he's AFK obviously with the baby and stuff, so he wasn't able to give those to me. But I am using my Mac's native screen recorder with QuickTime and recording my mic audio, so it should capture everything I'm saying and everything I'm doing. I don't know. I don't think it'll capture if someone like another student comes in and speaks. I don't think it'll capture that though. So, yep, no problem. So we'll have that uploaded like usual. Yes. So yes, a GUI or GUI is a graphical user interface. I remember when I was doing my final project for LC 101, looking up YouTube videos of how to do things, and I remember like hearing people talk about this GUI thing, and I was like, what are they talking about? Because I had never heard of it before. I was like, insert GUI butter cake joke here. I'm not from St. Louis, but anyway, GUI is graphical user interface. What is a CLI then? Luke was ready. He knew it was coming. Yeah, it's the command line interface. So you guys have used both. You've definitely used graphical user interfaces your whole life in some way or another probably. So you're very familiar with those. And maybe your first experience with command line is this class. So I'm going to give just an example for those of you that maybe don't have it totally solid grasp that yet. And we're going to start preparing for the exercise that was in your guys' materials for this week. So we're going to create a folder for where we're going to pull down and start our project for the exercises. And I'm going to use a GUI, a UI. So Mac has Finder, which is their GUI or UI interface for accessing your file system. So you guys have all probably used this, or Windows has something very similar. So let's create a folder here in our documents using the GUI. So new folder, and I'll say LC 101 class exercise. Boom. So now we use a GUI to make a folder, and now we can use a CLI. So Mac has, oh my boy, that's really inconvenient. I can move that, sweet. Okay, so this is a command line interface. This is a bash terminal to access my Mac. And what you'll find as you get more and more advanced as a developer, you'll start using certain tools that have command line interfaces. And you can do special things, and sometimes it can be very intimidating at first. And I will say to just have patience with yourself, and it's one of those things where there are complete wizards in the command line and know all sorts of tricks and can use this bash terminal just as well as using a GUI. But don't feel bad if you're not there. As always, things come with time. But you'll come into contact with applications that have command line interface options to use them rather than a graphic user interface. And sometimes it can be easier to do things actually. And we don't need to go into detail of why, but just know that it is important to get comfortable with command line in most lines of development work from my experience. So let's go find that folder that we just made using the GUI. So ls is a command to see all the current files in the directory that I'm in. And by the way, this little tilde, that little squiggly that you see after the colon, is my home directory of my computer. So it's like the highest directory you can go. And so I created that folder in documents, so I can use the cd command to go into documents. And now I can do ls again. And I can find, I called it LC101 something, I believe. LC101 class exercise, there it is right here. So I can go into that folder. And by the way, what I'm doing there, when I start typing it file name, so I'll go back. If you start typing any kind of file name, like there's a launch code, if you start typing it and you push tab, it'll auto-complete it for you. And if you'll see up here, you'll see all these tech resume edits. You can see that I edit them a lot. It's always funny to go back to your resume. When I go back to my resume I created right when I finished LC101, there are some pretty laughable things on it. But hopefully we'll do a good job of protecting you guys from that. But everybody knows that we're all new here, so they understand. But that's a side story. Hopefully I don't have to show you guys my first resume. So I'm going to hit tab, and it stopped at tech res. Because there's a tech res PDF right there, so it's saying, oh, are you talking about that? But I'm not. I'm talking about tech resume maybe. So I hit tab again, and it'll go to the farthest possible letter that it can before it matches multiple files, basically. So there's tons of tech resumes. So just typing tech resume tab isn't specific enough for it to autocomplete. That's just a quick little fun tool. So let's go back into our LC101 class exercise folder. Now we're in that folder. And now we want to create a file for the exercise. And I can't remember what they said to call it, but we'll just call it exercise.html. And it touches the command to create the file. And you do see the graphic interface change in the background. So boom, there's our file right there. And then I think I have code installed in the command line. So if I have VS Code installed, you can, if you're on a Windows, this will automatically install into your command line interface on your system. So you can just type the word code and then the file that you want to open. So I could do exercise.html, or I could do code and then just a period. And the period means to open open up that whole folder, basically open all the files in that directory. So then I would just hit enter. Oh, code command not found. So I didn't install. If you're on a Mac, you have to do an additional install. It's very easy in VS Code. And I know that some of the exercises in studios tell you guys to do code and to open it up. And so I've had a lot of people that say, oh, it's not working. That's why it's not working. So if you go to Visual Studio Code, I think I can just do, yeah. So you literally on a Mac, and you can Slack message me this later. You just open up your Visual Studio Code and do Command-Shift-P, which opens up what's called the command palette. And you search for the word code, and you see it popped up this option to shell command install code command in path. We don't need to go into details about what that all means necessarily. You can always Slack me, and we can go into detail. But for these purposes, this is how you install it on Mac. So there you go. Shell command code successfully installed in path. So I'm going to close VS Code just to demonstrate now. If I tried code again, it won't work. Oh, it will. I thought I had to reset the terminal after I installed something new in path, but I guess not. I feel like you used to have to do that. Maybe it's an update. Either way, there we go. So I installed the code into my path, code command, and now I can open VS Code from my CLI. So you're all familiar with both of those things. So moving on to the next question. What is, oh, actually there might be a question here first. Windows, yep, that's right. Windows automatically installs the code command in the path if you install VS Code on Windows. Mac does not. So moving on. What is an API? This is kind of a hard question. In your own words, Raquel, yes, everything's being recorded. Yes, those are the words that API stand for. Can anyone give me, in your own words, like describe kind of what an API does? What is it? It's the middleman. Two different programs, yeah. Yeah, those are all great. Interface to communicate between other programs, stores data, most of the time. Gateway between client and server. Yeah, those are very good and getting kind of technical, which is good. For me, when I was first learning, I remember it, let's see, Tom, I think the easiest way for me, an invisible CLI with specific commands. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's all about finding your own way to relate it for your own understanding. And so, yeah, like I love all these different descriptions. So one way that really made it click for me, and I'll say this: there's a YouTube channel called Traversy Media, and it's by Brad Traversy, and he's like got a great life story, and he does tons of videos on different kinds of technologies and applications. Yeah. I can't remember if it's with a C or a Y. You'll find it though. It's a huge channel. But he does so many YouTube walkthroughs of so many different applications and like different technologies. So let's say that, and I love that channel. It was a lifesaver when I was in your guys' shoes. Let's say you're working on your final project and there's something that you really want to use. You've heard about it. You've heard about this. You've heard about React, or you're going to do some Angular, but you want to get, you know, some extra reinforcement. Or maybe you want to like implement like a cool fun toy that like does some cool stuff in your app, like does cool visuals, and there's all sorts of crazy things you can do that are basically pre-made for you if you learn how to use them. And that's what a lot of coding is. And Brad does an awesome job of doing very beginner-friendly walkthroughs, and you can use his videos and resources to learn things and apply them to your own projects. So I highly recommend checking that channel out. There's so much education available for free these days, including Launch Code, which is in-depth and personal, but there's so many other resources too. I highly recommend that one. So he did a video on what an API is, and he described it a lot like you did. It's like the middleman. And so he described it as if it's a restaurant, and there's the kitchen, and then there's the front of the house, and then there's like the window in between, right? And so an API is kind of that window in between, or you use that window in between to communicate with the API. But I think the most important thing is to know that an API is a way for one computer application to talk to another. And it's really important to be able to communicate like that, right? And computers don't necessarily talk the way that people do, but it's similar in the fact that people around the world speak many different languages. And we've probably all had that experience speaking with someone that doesn't speak our language, and it's like really difficult and kind of funny. Computers have that same problem because, as most of you probably know, there are multiple languages that you can program in. We're learning JavaScript, which is great, but there are so many other languages, and I don't need to list them. But how could we possibly communicate between computer programs if they're speaking different languages? Does anybody have any ideas, perhaps? Perhaps that could lead us into the next question. I don't know, maybe. Have a common standard. JSON, okay. Yeah. Does anyone... Data formats, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, so JSON is a data format. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And it looks a lot like the objects that we've already been playing with in JavaScript. And so, yeah, so when a computer... It's like a universal computer. They use this because they want to have some kind of universal computer language. So JavaScript, an application that speaks JavaScript can send off a JSON object to a computer that's speaking C# or Java or something like that, or Go or Swift or anything, and can take that JSON object and completely understand it and do things with it. And that's why it's so important and critical. And you guys, JSON's going to be your best friend. Yes. And what let's talk about this. Does anyone have any, and this is a kind of a general question. There's one big one though in a JSON object versus a JavaScript object. There's one big difference that always catches people for years, I think. And does anyone have any things that are different between a JavaScript object and a JSON object? Yes. The quote requirement. Bingo. So many times, because people are creatures of habit. And so what you'll do is you'll be typing in JavaScript and working with JavaScript objects all day, and then you go to make a JSON object and you'll forget the double quotes. Bingo bango. Precisely. One thing I want to share with you guys too is you can't see the URL because all this stuff's in the way. This is a really useful tool that's on the internet, and it's a JSON formatter. So if I can go in here, I'm going to make a JSON object, okay? And actually, I'll make a JavaScript object, okay? And we'll say, what is a JavaScript object made up of? And a JSON object, what are they both made up of? Key value pairs. Yep, key value pairs. Those are your best friend. And so let's create a key, and I want to do something original because you guys just did names and favorite foods, but those are always the go-tos. How about dream lazy day destination? And I'll put I don't know. Where we feel like we want to have a lazy day, guys? Give me an idea here. Where are we going on vacation? Greece? Okay. Greece went first, guys. Oh shoot, I made a JavaScript object. I mean a JSON object. See, I'm mixing it up already. So we're doing our JavaScript. And then we've got our friend we're bringing with us. And her name is Francine. So this is our JavaScript object, and this is a JSON formatter, so I kind of gave away already what was wrong. But let's hit process. And string should be wrapped in double quotes. So it highlights exactly the problems for you, and it helps you out. And this app is your best friend, because when you get on the job, it is rad. And you can also click this little magical box, and guess what? It'll just fix it for you. And then there you go. You would just copy and paste this into your own code. Because usually, a lot of times you're working with JSON objects that are very big. Not always, but sometimes with very complicated ones. Where a key, its value is another object, and that object's key is an array, and then that array has a bunch of objects. I mean, it can get pretty big. I usually don't see anything too crazy, but sometimes it can just be hard to catch the small errors. Because there's so much, and it's hard to catch a double quote. I almost was really mean, like was gonna do a pop quiz question and find like a typeset that like the single quotes look like a double quote, just to mess with you guys. But I didn't. But I thought about it. So yeah, this website is gonna be your best friend, and I'll post it in the chat. Boom. So back to this. Okay, so on to another very exciting topic, and another thing that I didn't understand. I'm seriously hyped for you guys that you're learning this stuff in LC 101, because I didn't, and they're always growing the program and changing the stack, and I'm so jealous, and I'm just excited because I love this stuff. What is a promise? Because it is your best friend. It's a check for a future event. Okay, yeah. Any other ideas? The eventual result of an asynchronous event. Yes, that is a very great answer. Very technical. These are our representatives. Well done. Enter a I am the Senate meme here. Yeah, so a promise, a placeholder for a future process being completed or rejected. Yeah, so these are all great. And basically, you guys have started making some GET requests with things, right? And I believe that Will on Monday talked about, you're making these HTTP requests to somewhere in India. And it takes a hot second for that form to get there and back to you, maybe. And we all know, well, I'm trying to, maybe I won't do this example because we need to get to the exercise. But let's say we've all seen our code probably crash at some point or another in Replit because we get something that says reference error, my variable is undefined or something. So let's say on line 1, you you set a variable to be something that you have to go fetch somewhere, like a JSON object. And let's say your code keeps going and tries to use that variable you set, but it's empty because the response hasn't come back yet. That would be very bad for your code, right? Because your code would crash because the thing that you're waiting for and you need to use isn't there yet, but your code runs top to bottom really fast. And so asynchronous and synchronous actions are ways to control that and manage that. And we don't need to go too deep into that. But we do have to know how are promises involved with the fetch function in this week's prep materials. And that's kind of a general question, but you guys kind of answered that. But I'll say it again. How are promises involved with the fetch function? Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, fetch returns a promise until the actual response is back, right? It's promising to it promises us to get us what we asked for, or not. And in that case, it gives us an error, and we have to handle that error. But hopefully, it gives us what we want and promises us to get us something. And broken promises, rest in peace. That's my life these days. Through promise, you can actually set your timeouts for rejections. You can set timeouts, but hopefully, usually, unless you're getting something really big, it shouldn't take that long, hopefully, but just enough that you need to wait for it. So yeah, that's kind of the gist. There was a lot in this chapter, I thought, but I think it's best to just keep working and get your hands on. So let's just dive into the exercise for the prep materials this week. And I'm just going to kind of work through it from the ground up because I feel like all the time, I'm a current TA for this cohort, by the way, which I guess I didn't say that. But all the time, working with students outside my group and stuff, I feel like we still need, it's so important to work on how you solve your problem. So I just thought we would totally work through it as if I was looking at this for the first time, because maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. But we already opened up our code. So here's our exercise.html, which is going to tell us to look at. So first on the exercises, it quizzes us on which of these are valid JSON objects, which we played around with that. And I showed you guys how you can cheat and go use that JSON formatter. But it's not cheating, it's using your resources, as you will do for the rest of your life in this field. So never be afraid to use your resources. Okay, so go to the directory we're working on someone on homework and create a file called fetchplanner.html using touch. We called it, I think, exercise.html because I couldn't remember. Open the file in VS Code and add the preliminary HTML. So here we go. Boom. Nothing tricky yet. One thing I also want to share that I keep sharing because people keep asking. VS Code has an excellent tool called Live Server. So I've seen some people in the general chat talking about like what IDEs do you use and stuff like that. I've seen some great recommendations. My personal favorite is IntelliJ, but my work pays for that. It's not. There is a free version, which would probably be great for anything you guys would do. So maybe you can check out IntelliJ and check it out. Brackets has been another great suggestion, and VS Code. And I think VS Code, Brackets really fast and lightweight, but I think VS Code can do anything Brackets can do pretty much. So one thing that's really awesome to use when you're using VS Code is an extension called Live Server. So on your own VS Code, you would click this extensions icon. It looks like little Tetris blocks. And search for Live Server. And you just click on it and you'd click install. I already have it installed. And you would install it. It takes a very small download. And then the next thing you need to do is go over to your Explorer. So VS Code likes to use something called workspaces. And it's like a folder. It wants to know what folder you're in. So in this case, it already knows because I opened this from the command line. But a lot of people, if you open it from the GUI, sometimes it'll be unhappy. And if you click the files button, you'll see big blue buttons that say like open folder. So you would want to do that. So if pretending I clicked the open folder button and I didn't already have this open, I would just go to the folder that my class exercises are in and just click this button and click open. And then you'll know that it worked and VS Code is happy because you'll see this big blue bar down here. And that means VS Code is happy. And it's like, okay, let's get to work. So let's get to work. So what Live Server does is it provides, it's a really lightweight, fast, responsive server for your HTML code. So you can instantly make changes and see that happen in the browser. So if I click this, so you can do two things to start your server. You can right click and click open with Live Server, or you can go and click go live down here. So I click go live and boom. Here's our web page so far. So